Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and we are back after a year on hiatus with another Writer's Corner. Yeah, Dre, I was looking it up. It's been over a year since we did an episode of Writer's Corner. It's wild to think about. I mean, I moved to a different part of the country. I started working with Geeks and Gamers heavily. A lot's changed, which is why this hiatus was necessary. But of course, it's great to be back, especially coming in tandem with my new book that I'll be announcing portions of that later on in this episode. But I'm here joined by a couple people, and we will have a couple people cycling in. Mr. Bug and Adam the Renaissance Nerd will be joining us at some point during this show. We'll probably go only for an hour or two and just nerd out about writing. That's what the purpose of these streams are. We kind of have a discussion that we loop in a little bit, but it's more just to talk about what it's like being a writer and just having fun with talking about it in a public forum like this, interacting with the chat. So we're going to have a lot of fun with it. Let's start off by introducing the people who are here. Lawrence Knight, I believe this is your first time on my channel. Hail and welcome.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. When I saw the opportunity, and you saw what I said initially. I was like, well, I don't think I'm qualified to be on this panel, man, considering who you have on here. But I was wanted to, thank you for the encouragement and the opportunity to nerd out with you guys.
Of course, and the encouragement is another big reason why I love to do these shows, because I've heard from a lot of people in the chat, and even Adam, who will be joining us later, that these shows help encourage them to write, and that's more important than anything else, making the independent sphere larger. And not all of us are published. Dre and I are, but the rest of the people on the panel aren't, so the fact that you aren't yet, Lawrence, is not a qualifying factor to be on here. The only factor is, do you enjoy writing and have something to say about it on the topic, and it sounds like you do. So it's great to have you here. And Dre, my ever faithful co-host, coming back. How's it
Yeah.
going, man?
Oh man, I'm good to be back. Good to be back. I've been waiting for another writer's corner for a year now. So I'm excited to be back here. For those that aren't familiar with me, I'm Dre the Brute Daniels. I am the owner of Brutal Plan Comics, the head writer, editor, director of Trouble the Rhythm Within, the ongoing comic series. Feels good to be back, and I can't wait to hear from everybody. So I'm excited.
Perfect. Well, we're going to jump into a little bit of background on all of our writing and catch up over the last year what Dre and I have been up to. But real fast, I want to say hail and howdy to the chat. We've got Legatus in the chat, the ever faithful mod, keeping everyone in line. Dr. Rachel Lindberg, Kenzo UK, and several other people who I haven't seen in a while. Green-haired anti-liberal, it's great to have you here. And Vin Zinger, I definitely haven't seen you in a while. Great to have you back, my friend. And yeah, so let's just jump right into it. We got to catch up on a year's worth of writing. So I am actually starting a new book. It's been a while since I wrote actively. My second book that I published, Apocalypse Then, was published back in 2021. So it's been several years since I published anything. It was definitely time for me to get back into it. And I'm writing a book called Palace, which is a sci-fi story on another planet. And that is Palace as in Pallas Athena. So there will be some Greek mythology tied into it, as apparently is my staple. I didn't do that intentionally when I started drafting up this idea. But at a certain point I realized, am I just going to be like typecasting myself as the guy who makes Greek mythology about everything he decides to do? But we'll get into more detail on that later. And Dre, you've got some interesting projects that just came out. A fulfillment over on Indiegogo, was it, or was it
Yeah,
GoFundMe?
so I did on Indiegogo. I did the official trade paperback for Trouble the Rhythm Within, all 8 issues in one clean sweep. The campaign was a resounding success. I started fulfillment way ahead of schedule. So that's always a good thing. So this went over really, really well. A lot of good support. A lot of people checked it out, and a lot of new people that I came in contact with that weren't familiar with my work got onto the Trouble train. So it went over really, really well. I'm very, very happy and very excited of how well it went. So yeah, I'm a very, very happy panda for how this joint went down.
That's awesome. And I do have a copy of it. It's in the TARDIS behind me. And yeah, I definitely will be cracking open that collection of your arc. It's a great story from what I have read so far. So I definitely recommend Trouble the Rhythm Within to everyone out there who's interested in comic books, superheroes, and a new take from an independent creator that doesn't have any connection to Marvel and DC, which is a very good thing these
Oh,
days.
dear Lord.
But Lawrence Knight, this is your first time on the Writers Corner, so if you could just give us a little bit of background on what type of writing you do, for what medium, and just your writing experience in general.
Well, I call myself a rebel of the game. I have a bachelor's degree in English, so I've definitely gone through the whole writing point. Um, I noticed that what I like to write about is fiction, fiction and fantasy, mystery, thrillers, and horror. I, Comedy has to it has to I have to be in a certain headspace for that. I found out really quick that comedy is not easy to write at all.
Nope.
In my opinion, it's probably the most difficult thing to write for. So stand-up comics, my hat is off to you, because I don't know how you do it. My talent only goes so far. uh, but I enjoy writing short stories. I'm definitely For me, I want to write a book, but my problem is I have so many ideas and so many characters in my head that I have a habit of starting multiple books at the same time, and then I get burnt out quick, and I'll put them down and never pick them
Hmm.
back up. So what I decided to do is to challenge myself and to restart my creative juices. I started my second channel, and I've been writing short fiction. I can't really call it flash fiction because it's more than 500 words, but I've been writing short fiction and then reading them and then uploading the videos of the reading onto the channel, really to just to get myself back into it and get myself, just get back into that mode of writing. And my goal is to give people an escape. I don't want to put any politics or anything. I can't stand any of that stuff. So I just want to give people a good time, uh, create interesting and strong characters, and I try to make them as original as possible. But I also realize that I draw inspiration from others. So, for example, Jed, yourself and Dre, I guarantee you, sometime tonight, two characters that I've never thought of before are going to appear in my head, and they're going to look just like the two of you, and they're going to have similar characteristics and do all kinds of things. That's just how my brain works.
Lawrence, you have my explicit direction to use my likeness. 110%. By all means. Yeah,
I appreciate
go
it.
for it. Go for it. Yeah. And one thing I will say, let the ideas just come. Just let them flow like milk and honey. But Excel spreadsheets are your friend. Let me be clear. They are your friend. That was the first storyboard I ever put together, was via Excel spreadsheets, just so I can organize my characters. It it did a world of good for me. Putting them all, just categorizing them and having all their details on separate little sheets did so much good. So I could not recommend that strategy higher, to just how to just have them all labeled and be able to just go through them like that. It helped me tremendously.
I
I just
don't know
wrote
how
that
you
down.
do it, honestly. How you use Excel sheets. I mean, as we've shown before on this show, my outlining method is straight up psychotic, according
It's
to Dre.
trash. It's insanity. Yeah,
But I don't know how Excel works for you.
yeah. Jed just has a freaking word salad and
Hmm.
webs going every. I'm like, bruh, how do you? Where is this going? I have no idea where any of these directions are. And God bless your editor, because this is this ain't gonna
Sounds
help
like
me.
me.
Well, I mean, it helps that no one can steal my work then. If someone like gets a hold of my outline, I don't have to worry about any copyright infringement or getting any material stolen. It's all just me. I just think of it, it's encoded. We'll go with that. It's encoded
Yeah,
for my use
that's the
That's
word
only.
we'll
smart.
use. That man, the daggone Da Vinci Code has less codes than that thing. So, yo, is a mind palace. But hey, man, but somehow, some way, you make it work. So I tip my rag to you, my friend, because that's wild.
Well, let's dive into the discussion a little bit and see how things end up. So, the discussion I wanted to focus on was good versus bad exposition. And this is a topic that is always coming up, at least for myself, and I'm sure for Dre and Lawrence as well, when it comes to review and analysis of film and television, because exposition is one of the most common uses of dialogue. But it's so often misused. I mean, a great example is Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Netflix live action, which just came out. I only watched the first episode, but there was excessive amounts of repetitive exposition. Pretty
Mm.
much the whole first episode was repeating the knowledge that yes, Aang is the Avatar, yes, the Fire Nation's attack. Like, it was the same thing over and over again. Whereas the animated show got all that out in the opening credits scene. We know where they are in the world. We know what the big threat is, and it's concise in less than 20 seconds. This one spends about 40 minutes setting up those 20 seconds. So there's just a lot of great examples of bad exposition, but I wanted to see what your guys' thoughts are on good exposition, how to do it correctly, how to integrate it in a way that makes sense without feeling forced. So let's start with Dre. Do you have any thoughts on the idea of exposition?
Absolutely. Exposition, when used properly, can be a very useful tool. But when abused, is the worst thing that will sink anything that you're doing. Um, we all have heard the expression, show, don't tell, blah, 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 blah. Exposition is used as a tool to start showing. To give a very easy example, the original Star Wars crawl is an exposition dump.
Absolutely.
However, it leads directly into showing. It tells us there's a conflict and then immediately goes into a continuation of said conflict right when that crawl is done. It's a perfect way of using exposition to explain how your world works and then putting the audience directly where we need to be. Now, a use of bad exposition. Well, good God, how many examples can there be? But anytime when there's an exposition dump, which is always, I love using that term, it's great. An exposition dump is always when you need to be shown something and they're just throwing words at you. And that takes me directly out of the world. I can give you an example, countless bad examples, but I can give you an example of how it worked well and if it was the inference, how it would have been destroyed. One of my favorite movies, The Count of Monte Cristo, 2002. Love that movie. Me and Jed, we've gushed about it in the past. That film shows us exactly why Edmond Dantes goes on his crusade of vengeance. Now, if we had an opening crawl like for Star Wars, explaining all the things that had happened and his betrayal, and then we're in the Chateau d'If right when the movie starts, we're lost, dazed, and confused because we need to feel what he is feeling. We need to see how he's being betrayed. We need to see why he's going on this crusade.
Mm-hmm.
Without those, at least I think it was about 35 minutes of showing what happened to him pre Chateau d'If, we would be lost, dazed, confused, and would not connect with the character at all. And unfortunately, that is what the overwhelming majority of film modern day has been doing. An overwhelming amount of telling us and just like, look, this is how all this stuff works. Blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, that's great. But if I don't feel anything,
Mm-hmm.
you've wasted your time. So that's a good clear cut way of
Mm-hmm.
how I like to view how exposition can be done well and how it has systematically destroyed pretty much everything else.
Well, the way you describe it is a great way of highlighting one of the major problems with the modern writing industries is the fact that they don't seem to trust their audience to figure things out. They're constantly over explaining things, dumbing it down to an insane degree when it's not a children's film. You're expecting an adult audience, so trust them to have adult basic level of intelligence. But they fundamentally do not trust their audience, so they got to spell it out. They've got to just repetitively reinforce the key aspects of this plot, regardless of way it would be intricated. So yeah, that was a great distinction between the two, Dre. Thank you. And Lawrence, what about you? You have any ideas of good versus bad exposition?
Um, for me, good exposition is when you give me a basic premise and then you go into details throughout the story. If I have to constantly be told that Aang is the last airbender multiple times throughout a movie, what pops in my head is not only is I'm so sick and tired of being told that I know this, but what also crosses my mind is, well, it sounds like you don't believe it. Who are you trying to convince, me or yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when I write a story, and I love exposition, so I it's the main reason why I practice a lot of flash fiction and short writing, because it forces you to use words that will help people understand. You can get that basic premise out with just a basic explanation, and then you can reveal more, as you go on. So I just give them a basic framework, like this person got exiled because their power grew too great for where they were at, and instead of putting their realm in danger, they chose exile to come here. And then you can input your characters and go from there. Bad exposition is when I'm reading a novel before I even know the name. you know, and I'm just watching. Instead, I'm watching it. I'm watching the movie, and it's just gets monotonous really quick. Is exactly what Dre said. So I'm searching for an explanation because I agree I was gonna say exactly what Dre said.
Well, I think one of the best forms of bad exposition that we see most common in modern media is exposition that the characters already know.
Oi.
Like that one really grinds my gears. Two characters who know exactly what's happening just say something like, "As you know," explain
Oh.
everything that's going on.
Oh.
That's
Oh.
lazy too.
God.
That's
It's
being
so
lazy.
lazy.
Oh, God. Dang it, Jed. I pushed those words out my head. Oh, my Lord. As you may know. No, I don't. How about you just do it? Psychopaths? Isn't that see, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jed, because
Hmm.
that's why the importance, especially in like fantasy, science fiction, and genres like this, a fish out of water character is so mandatory. It's
It's a cliche, but
mandatory.
it's so helpful.
You need it,
Hmm.
especially in a world that we as normal human beings don't understand. Let's just take something simple. Harry Potter, okay?
Hmm.
If he was already elbow deep before he had to be taken from the land, blah, 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 from his step parents, yada, 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 all that stuff. Imagine if he was already in the school and already elbow deep in all the magic and
Hmm.
all that other stuff. Who the heck? We're not going to know what's going on. But if we have a character that's being drugged into the world, so we as the audience are being drugged into it with him, so that we can learn and grow as he grows. So that as he learns the world, we learn the world.
Hmm.
Easy stuff. And like yes, it's a cliche, but it's a mandatory cliche. You need it. And it blows my freaking skull. Because like one of my favorite movies is The Last Starfighter, for those that
Mm.
have ever seen
I
that movie
remember that
before.
one. It's a classic.
Yeah. Yeah, The Last Starfighter. And yes, it's Star Wars slash Jesus Christ. Battlestar Galactica, all blended into one. But at the same time, we're following a character that's got nothing to do with the conflict at all. So as he's learning and coming in contact with freak aliens and all that other stuff, we are learning and growing. So as he learns and starts accomplishing things, we learn and accomplish things. We need it so badly. When you take and we'll take a bad version of that as well. You could take the prequel movies, from Star Wars. Yes, do people love these movies? Absolutely, people
Hmm.
love them. However, narratively, they are written horribly
Hmm.
because we never have a character that we're following. In episode 1, we could have had little Anakin, but we don't see him till an hour in. I mean, we're like, there's no character that we're following that
Hmm.
we're learning. We can't follow
Hmm.
anything. So everyone's just sitting there like, what the heck is going on? What do you mean trade dispute? Like we don't know or care. It is so necessary to have these type of characters, especially in fantasy. And I'm sorry that those words just boil my piss, as you may know. Oh God, I don't know. Stop putting characters in that know everything, unless this is a pre-established universe that everybody is familiar with. If that is not the case, get those words out of your vocabulary. I hate it. Oh, goodness.
That is definitely a
Oh.
phrase that writers should avoid, unless, I mean, like, it can make sense, but in that context, absolutely avoid it.
Yes,
But
it can make sense if we already know what's going on. If we
mhm,
let's just say it's a sequel in a film, and so the first film we got to know the world and everything,
yeah,
and now we're in a sequel, and then we already know that all the players involved, and now there might be a character that might be being introduced or whatever. Now that can actually be a sequence, even though I still think those words shouldn't be used, but nonetheless, it can still be used in a way to help elevate what's going on. But it's
mhm,
such a minute chance of that actually working. I would not roll those dice.
yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
Well, in what you said, there was another side tangent that I wanted to highlight is a lot of modern writers, especially the ones who are getting work in Hollywood, they are so obsessed with avoiding classic models, classic techniques for writing, like the hero's journey,
Ugh.
like a fish out of water character. They're so obsessed with the idea that if it's common, it's bad. And that's not necessarily right, because these things are common, these things are cliche for a reason, because they work. It's like what we say with all these franchises that are being overtaken by the modern studio and changed for a new target audience or something like that. It's like, this has been working forever. Why are you changing it? You're only alienating the people who are invested in this story. And I've never fully gotten the idea of just avoiding anything that came from the past, because even the greatest writers from the last few centuries have taken inspiration from previous writers, have taken techniques from previous writers. There's no such thing as an original work. There's nothing new under the sun, as a famous quote says. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. Even Tolkien was repurposing Norse mythology, for example, to a large degree. So avoiding the past, I think, is a massive mistake. Learning from it and integrating it in a logical manner is the sign of a great writer, in my opinion, at least. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Lawrence, you can go ahead.
I was hoping you go first.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was like, I was
Well, it's
rolling.
not that I would even say. I just wanted you.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. What I would say to that is yes, I agree. And to Harper on the point, there's no such thing as a modern audience. It's a myth. Yeah, I don't know where they coined that phrase. I don't know where Hollywood pulled that out of their butt cheeks. I have no clue where they got that from. It does not exist. The same audience that's been there since year one is the same audience that's here now. The same stories, and you touched on it perfectly. The same stories that was told thousands of years ago are still being told today. So the idea of saying, "Oh, screw those thousands of years of written and oral history. We're gonna chase an audience that's not real." I'm like, bruh,
Exactly.
that's not how that works. That's not how that works. Take any genre. Take any genre. It all is going to end up going back to the time where the written word first began. That's how it works. It will not change. That's the way it always will be, always has been. So yeah, so the idea that yes, we're going to chase this modern audience, which is fantasy and fool's gold, and clearly every studio has lost hundreds of billions. So obviously this phantom audience does not exist. And get back to what makes sense, telling stories that everybody can relate to for thousands of years. It's not even rocket science. This is 1 + 1 = 2. I just it's ludicrous on how we as a society has strayed away from traditional values, traditional storytelling, and like, oh, the hero's journey. We don't need a hero's journey. We're going to subvert expectations. No, that's not how the world works. So I just find that fascinating. It's odd,
Well,
weird place.
I will. Well, I will chime in on that. Um, we have to keep in mind that when they say modern audience, it's like you said, Dre. It's wishful thinking, because honoring what's come before us, which is still in the present and going ahead of us, that's been deemed racist.
Of
So
course.
when they say modern audience and they're pushing all these things forward, and it's their attempt to try to program people into disregarding what's real and going along with what is ultimately going to destroy us. It's all about it's all about their agenda. So that's why you see a lot of this crap going on. That's why you see Disney in the situation that they're in, because the more they get caught, the more they're buckling down. And I'm not trying to turn this into a
Hmm.
political thing. It's just being honest. It's you just see them doubling down on things that are destroying them, and they just don't want to let it go. And so yeah, I agree with you, Jed. It's just it's a shame, and they just it's ridiculous what's going on. But as we said backstage, hey, keep going on, go right ahead and doing what you're doing, because the rest of us that want to create and want to do things, you're making it easier for us. So you go right ahead, keep doing what you're doing.
Well, you also bring up an interesting point of them not being able to let go, because that's actually what we spoke about on the last episode of Writer's Corner last year, was the idea of kill your darlings. Every writer has these things that they're obsessed with, some things that they love implicitly, but they don't necessarily make sense in the story. You can't integrate them properly. So you have to know when to kill your darlings, when to give up on maybe a moment that you absolutely adore, a shot that you absolutely adore, if it can't work logically. And that's something that these writers these days and studios don't understand, is their darlings is the political message, is the diversity quotas, and they don't care how it's inserted into the story as long as it's the forefront. The story can suffer as much as it needs to as a result of that. But every talented writer knows sometimes you have to give up on what you love most in the story to make it a quality story. And I just think that's the moment a writer is able to do that and make something better is the moment that they, graduate from being an amateur.
Yeah, and you know what? We also have to keep in mind, and this just came to me, when we're talking about exposition. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, has become their exposition, and nothing else matters to them.
Yeah, that's a go ahead.
DEI is a death note to everything. It's oh my god. And you're right, Lawrence. It has become exposition somehow, but it's hmm. DEI is the death of all creativity.
Hmm.
Plain and simple. It's the death of all of it. If you have an idea, I'm gonna take this idea and then send it to people that hate everything I believe in order for them to critique my work and then send it back to me as a work that is acceptable for the modern audience. That is ludicrous. That's insane. And the idea, and Lawrence, I never even thought about it that way. It is the exposition. What your identify is, what's your skin color, who you banging, like all that
Hmm.
nonsense is what's being used as exposition, which is insane. And Jed, you touched on it a bit about the killing of the darling. Now that used to be a term that was used for a major moment in usually a character's history or a chance to shake things up. Like some of us that remember the death of Superman when that comic was released. That is essentially the kill your darling moment, and it was huge and it was momentous and it got a lot of people talking, a lot of stuff like that. Now it's not about giving a splash to a great character or a send off to something wonderful or great. Now it's I'm going to destroy it in the name of DEI. Ah, that doesn't work. All you're going to do is alienate all the people that loved whatever that work was, and you're not getting a new audience from it. You're literally sending your child ablaze for absolutely no recognizable beneficial reason, except to look not racist. I it's just it's weird.
Well, on this topic, yesterday I actually discovered something very interesting while I was writing. I I'm a pleb, okay? Everyone knows that I use Microsoft Word to write my books. I've been told that is basic bitch, but it works for me. And yesterday, while I was editing, a weird thing came up in the grammar spell check that they have. So I decided to take a look at my grammar and spell check settings. And I'm just going to show you guys a section of grammar, not, some other random refinement tool in the grammar settings, what Microsoft Word has as a default option. Oh, is it not going to show up? Let me share window instead.
I'm not sure what the heck
This
is YTB.
Yeah, I just want that to be there as an example. This is a brand new document. These are the default settings that they have. They have an inclusivity section under grammar in Microsoft Word, and these
What?
are the default settings. I haven't changed these at all. There's an option to turn on gendered pronouns. If you use he, she, whatever, those will be flagged by your grammar check. Your spelling grammar will check. And apparently there's social economical bias too. So if you say that person's a poor, it's going to be flagged as incorrect grammar if you turn that on. But age bias, cultural bias, disability bias, ethnic slurs, gender bias, racial bias, gender specific language, sexual orientation bias, these are things that are automatically flagged by Microsoft Grammar. This might be the convincing I need to move on to a different program to write this alone.
That might be the kick in the pants you need. I think that's it. First and foremost, the fact that, oh my God, pronouns is labeled as under grammar is just the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. Um, he and shit. So it's fun. Like it's hilarious. It's
Well,
hilarious. Go for it, Lawrence. Go for it.
Oh, thank you. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dre.
No, please.
But you know what? I mean, people love spell check and and Word, but I've been saying it since I was in my undergrad. I've always said that there was something off about that thing because it will tell you that something's wrong when it's not necessarily that makes any sense. Like you could type a sentence and there's actually nothing structurally wrong with that sentence. But sometimes spell check will say, hey, you did this wrong. You put this comma in the wrong place when it's not actually wrong. So I've always been leery of spell check anyway, because people may or may not know, writing styles are like fingerprints. And if you trust spell check too much, especially if you're in college, well, that thing is hitting everybody the same way. And you turn your papers in, and guess what your professor's doing? He's looking at you and he's looking at the person sitting on the other side of the classroom, and he's thinking one of you or both of you are lying. And that's how a paper turns into a D with a warning attached to it. And that's a true story. I actually saw that.
And that's there being a plagiarism issue with these, because they all are telling the people to do the same thing.
Absolutely. And the idea of I grew up in inner city, so punctuations did not exist for us. Okay. So like that was one of the major problems that I had was with punctuations, because from the inner city we do are run-on sentences. Okay, that's the way we talk. It's run-on sentences.
There's something beautiful about run-on sentences. It's my guilty pleasure.
Yeah, we just like period. Like okay, great. But the idea that, especially the uses of the commas, and apostrophes, in especially Ebonic language, especially when you're writing slang or writing for that type, they're gonna correct you over and over and over again, despite the fact that you are technically speaking a different language. It is still going to correct you in the exact same way, and then you'll find yourself correcting your own native language with that skew, which is absolutely insane when you say it out loud. But the idea of using that exact same principle for gender biased language, which, look, I've been on the record several times. I don't know what any of that crap means. I don't want to know what it means. I'm too old for that foolishness. So the whole idea that, hey, me as Microsoft Word is going to correct how you use your pronouns is ludicrous. That's insane, because for thousands of years we use pronouns like, pronouns until like what, 20 minutes ago. So,
well, speaking of made up pronouns, we have our representation has arrived to instruct us.
Shut up. Goddamn representation. Me,
Sound
hey!
triggered. He sound triggered, Adam.
Oh,
All right.
Are
Sorry,
you a
I'm
part of the
late.
modern audience?
Sorry, I don't know. What am I? I don't know. I'm sorry I'm late. Things happen. Things outside my control. Give me a moment. How are we doing? What I miss?
You missed a discussion on good versus bad exposition, which we'll try to tie in a few times throughout the rest of the stream. And apparently, Microsoft Word under grammar settings has inclusivity settings.
Oh, I
which
turn
will-
that shit off. I don't use
Yeah.
that. I just need it for spelling because I can't spell for shit.
That's fair.
Oh, it's
And
still
yeah,
better than Jeremy though.
we were talking about how it has difficulty with other language like Ebonics, and it's had issues with my dialogue in the past because depending on what I'm writing, sometimes I wrote a Norse mythology story for someone else recently, and I had to use more ancient sounding dialogue, and it was confused as hell by that. So yeah, grammar might not be the grammar checks might not be the best friend of a writer who's just starting out and might default to whatever the grammar check says rather than finding out whether or not it's right in each instance. But it's great to have you here, Adam, who, according to a promise he made, he said he would have gotten some writing done this last week.
Does
so
a
we'll
sentence
see.
count? Does a sentence count?
a sentence. I'll take it. I'll take a sentence out of it.
A sentence and a lot of thought. How's that? Because week was busier than I thought it was going to be. No, but I have started working out. The prologue has progressed. Chapter 1 has something in it, and that's about the most I can say of the next book.
Well, starting is always the most difficult step. At least it is for me.
Yeah.
So
Getting
I'll
back
accept.
to it. Getting back to it's the most difficult step for me when I go on an extended break. That's the biggest problem for me is basically, okay, I took a break to start. I took a break because I don't, we've talked about this before. I don't run into writer's block. I just I want to make sure that I don't lose whatever rhythm or themes I'm working with or that I don't have to retcon something later on because I didn't properly plan it out. So I usually stop when I run into a plot issue where I need to make sure everything's going to line up going forward. Or I feel like, is this going to be too generic? Is it going to be too stupid? Is it going to be seen through too simply what I'm putting together here? So I stop and say, okay, how can I make this new and fresh? Because let's be honest, we are a couple thousand years into our modern history. And in terms of storytelling, even longer than that, everything's been done. Everything's been done. What the trick is now is to make sure that you do it fresh. You make it interesting. And that's where, to tie it into today's topic, exposition comes into play. Because you want to make sure that you're not just talking at your audience. You want to make sure you are giving them information while pulling them into the world. I mean, has anybody mentioned Avatar live action yet?
It was what I used to start this discussion on of bad exposition.
So yes, that show is just exposition. Let's get to a famous incident in the show. Exposition. Let's get to another famous incident. So, oh look, a line you're familiar with.
Well, an example from the live action, which isn't in the anime and takes place in the first few minutes, so I don't think that'll constitute as a spoiler, is something that I think is a great example of this. We don't, as we discussed earlier, Dre has a problem with as you know. Well, another example of bad exposition is the people you wouldn't give this exposition to. So the beginning of the live action Avatar starts with this random Earth warrior getting captured while trying to deliver a message about the Fire Nation's invasion. And he's in an Earth City kingdom. He's clearly in an Earth City, and he's taken all the way back to the Palace of the Fire Lord, taken to Sozin, and Sozin just like, I wanted your message to get out there because everyone's going to go to the Earth Nation. Well, we're going to the Air Temple. And then he kills the guy.
And,
kill the guy in the Earth City, and none of that needed to happen.
Well,
wait, I'm confused.
You see, now, here's how that... First of all, I'm saving this conversation for Avatar discussion tomorrow.
Ooh.
But let's forget the part that they're just altering lore completely. Let's forget that source material completely changed, completely altered. this could have been solved. If you're going to change this, it could have been solved with them at a war table saying the message has gotten out, the false information has gotten out. We can now proceed with our plan to attack the Southern Air. I did that in 30 seconds. Wow. I didn't need a long, drawn-out scene that not only breaks lore, but breaks how bending works. He just grabs a guy and sets him on fire. Fuck that.
Yeah, no, you cleared it up very, very well for us in a way that you didn't. The show could have done it in the exact same way, similar to how the show used its opening sequence to explain what is going on, the conflict. This episode took the first 40 minutes to accomplish the exact same thing.
Listen, perfect example of the fact that I have started working on something in. Second book, prologue. There are advantages to starting your second book when you're already into the series. You don't have to go through a whole bunch of extra character interaction. You don't have to go through a whole bunch of making sure you know who your characters are. When you're with your regular characters you have from the previous story, you can dive right in. Problem is, second book, you're expanding your world. You're expanding your lore. Now it's time to introduce new characters. Well, prologue, I'm introducing a new character, a character who's going to go forward for many, many series to come, to a very important character. I have to introduce him. New setting, new character. What do I do? What's one of my tricks? Okay. Giving a short history lesson within his observing things. And keep it mental. Keep it a private conversation. That way, if you're inside that character's mind, yes, it's exposition, but you're learning how this character thinks.
It's serving multiple functions, and that's the best thing about exposition if it's doing multiple things. But I do need to interrupt here to say thank you, Dom H, in the chat with 10 gifted memberships. That is a lot of money. I appreciate it, Dom H. And he's a great supporter over on Geeks and Gamers, seen him all over the place. I'm glad you made it over here, and I hope this discussion is interesting to you, and you feel like you get your money's worth out of those 10 gifted memberships. But you brought up an interesting thing, Adam, that writers eventually will have to get to, but it's never something that they have to do on their first projects, or maybe even their first multiple projects, is doing a sequel is nothing like doing an original. Your style of writing has to change. Your style of exposition has to change because there's a foundation that you have to trust your audience to remember to a certain extent. And so Dre and Adam, you both made sequels before. Do you guys have any thoughts of how exposition and writing in general evolves with sequels?
It's hard. One thing that I ran into, actually running into currently, because now I'm writing a new series because screw me, I hate myself. One thing that's always difficult is the idea of retention. Retention for the previous arc or the previous story can be a bit difficult because when it comes to exposition, you don't want to do the whole spending a whole lot of time recapping what was done before. You don't want to really spend all that time. Now, there's some creative ways around this that I found recently anyway, is using, you can use a page, in my case, for your book or your novel, whatever the case may be, of bullet point, as I like to call, panels, which is all the major events that happened in the previous issue without having to sit there and say a whole lot of stuff. You'll see the image, your brain will recall and be like, oh yeah, that's right, blah, 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 blah. And it's easy for you to transition and then continue your story. It's really easy to fall into the trap of saying, previously on, because like for those that grew up during that time period when we had the cartoons, we had a previously on, and you got 15, 30 seconds and show whatever the previous issue was. You don't really have that type of leverage or time when it comes to the written word. So a lot of people can fall into the trap of going into exposition just so people can get caught up, which will do not only you a disservice in your writing, but you're also not giving your audience enough credit to really remember what happened. Because if they're coming back to read your second book or your second issue or whatever the case may be, rest assured, they have taken the time to read the first one. So you don't have to spend so much time sitting there pushing it back through the oven. So that's one way you can avoid it, and definitely basically a pitfall you want to avoid.
Lawrence or Adam, do you have anything to add on that?
Oh, sure. Larry, you can go first.
Well, I don't have anything to add.
Oh, well, then I have anything to say.
I'm just saying, Dre and I seem to think a lot alike, so I'm like, man, he's taking a word.
When it comes to doing a sequel, especially if you're carrying over characters from your first story, one of the tricks I, of course, like to use is when it comes to exposition or avoiding too much exposition, lean into the character traits you established with them in the first story. That way, if you, let's say a couple who are supposed to be your love interest, but they're on the beginnings of it, or perhaps you're creating a love triangle, have the two the two same gender who are a part of, because your love triangle is in the way we normally do it, two same gender, one other gender. You know, we're not gonna mix and match here. And the two of the same gender want the person of the one gender. What you want to do maybe is have the ignition of the competition there. If you teased it a little bit in the first one, you started up a little bit here. Have them do their traditional barb trading. Have them do that. Have the main character, let's say the main character is oblivious to the whole interest of both parties. Have that be on display. And if you're going through the eyes of one of the people who are interested in the other character, have that be a stressful thing to remind you, yes, we started setting this up. Or if you're reversing it, let's say it's just currently a couple, but they're in their very, very nascent development of their relationship. Instead of rehashing the moments from the previous story where they almost got intimate or found some level of attraction, just create a new situation and have the momentary thought internally of, remember the moment when they were pressed up against each other, this and that. Have that flash in there. And the reader, as Dre said, is familiar with the scene. You don't have to rehash it. As we would say, trust your audience. Believe in your audience that they're smart enough to remember the scene, because guess what? If they love what you've done, they're going to have that scene tattooed on their brain, or they're going to have their favorite scenes. They're going to be like, oh yeah, that was the moment where this was kindled.
Well,
go ahead. Go, yeah.
Oh, just with all that, it's a very interesting thing that you brought up, is the idea of an internal monologue, which is the biggest change I saw going from what I initially started writing was screenplays to writing novels. Is you have this new tool that isn't cliche, like narration voiceover. I find so dumb in most movies and television shows. Sometimes it can work, but it's very rare. But in books, it's a fundamental aspect of novel writing and comic book writing, because you can have the head bubbles. So it opens up that avenue, which makes exposition significantly easier, because as much as a character won't turn to another character and say, as you well know, my dear friend, and a person will think, oh, that I just saw connects with this other thing that I remember. And of course you could do it better than I just described it there, but the internal monologue is a very understated tool in a writer's kit that I loved when I first started writing my first novel, so much to the fact that I made that first book and its sequel from a first person perspective, because it made everything internal monologue. It's just such a fascinating tool that I think can help a lot of exposition in some cases.
Yeah, I tend to go third person whenever I do.
I do now.
I do third person because I like to jump the characters, and that's another way to avoid too much exposition, by changing perspective. If you change perspective, then you have a fresh canvas to tell the story, because that person may not know what's going on, and then you have a new way through their eyes to look at the situation and tell it in a new, fresh way, especially if you need to include elements you couldn't include from somebody else's perspective. And that way that's why multiple perspectives give you a complete story when you're doing third person. With first person, that's part of the allure, that you're only seeing it through their eyes, and then everything's a surprise. But third person, that's how you paint the full tapestry of whatever you're trying to get across.
I like to mix and match. I absolutely love first person perspective, but I always try to look for a way to go between first, second, and third if it's possible. If not, then I'll stick with one or the other, because I've definitely had my challenges shifting, especially from first to third. I'm getting better at transitioning, but I do like to keep things fresh, for
Mm-hmm.
myself, especially with writing, and also kind of write. I don't write with the traditional prose because when I read a book, it's easy for me to get distracted. Like if something's going on around me, and then I'll go back, and it'll take me a minute I've got to sift through the paragraph to try to find where I left off, you know. So I need a little bit of spacing, um, especially when the characters are talking. So I'll put some spacing and leave a paragraph for themselves. Um, Going back to what Dre said about, when you watch an episode and they say, well, previously on so and so, I've never liked that. Even as a kid, it made me throw something at the TV, especially when X-Men was on in the 90s, because previously on X-Men, I'm like, I already know what happened previously on X-Men. You've just wasted time. What you just told me is that you hit a writer's block somewhere and you decided to fill those extra minutes with something I saw last week. Oh, and by the way, if I missed last week's episode and I just decided to go forward and I'll say, hey, I want to go back and watch it. Well, now there's no reason to.
Another interesting trick to deal with if you want to go through exposition but stay in the first person, I found, is do a journal entry section
Mm-hmm.
where you're reading their journal, and that's all exposition. But if you've been third person, you switch to first person, and then you can put all their emotion into their words while explaining situations that happen. It's a good way to cover a period of time. One time I had to cover a 3-month travel period in one chapter, just to catch up, to keep all different arcs, separate arcs aligned of what all the different character groups are doing. And I didn't want to write this one particular group's individual adventures, because let's be honest, they were kind of they were like an E plot at this point, but I needed to tie them in and get them into place to be a part of a C plot. Well, I decided I'm just going to do journal entry, and I did about 14, 15 pages of this person dictating what they went through, and it worked. And it worked out just fine, and it filled the gap. It made it interesting, and that's literally a whole entire chapter of just exposition. But it's filled with their emotions and their feelings and their thoughts on everything that happened while explaining it. At the same time, another cheat I do use are when I have to do expositions is history lessons, catching up on the lore. And I know Jed loves this kind of stuff, because then when you do that, that's world building. And everybody loves world building, even if it's just 10 pages of talking about past events. But if they've never heard it before, if it's new to the lore, they're going to sit there going, all right, now I know how all this connects here. Now the history is now broader, and now I'm going to start to try and figure out where this is going, maybe try and beat the author to his point and say, oh, I figured this out. So that's another good, those are two cheats I will use for exposition.
Well,
Can I
you've
give
just go ahead.
I was gonna say, can I give an example? And this is what popped in my head as far as world building. Lord of the Rings did that for me. The first one, the first Lord of the Rings movie of the trilogy, with the explanation of the rings of power. It not only did it help me to instantly understand what was going on at the start, but it made me look forward in them building on and adding more detail, because I knew it was part of a trilogy. But I thought that they did an excellent job, and in the books, I've never read the books, I admit, but I'm pretty sure that that there was a good amount of that opening in the movie. I'm sure it was a lot of pages were behind that.
Oh, it's been a long time since I read the book, but it's Tolkien, so I'm sure you're right. But you both highlighted the most important aspect. Again, Adam's brought it up again, but the most important aspect of making exposition good versus bad is it serving more than one purpose? If exposition is accomplishing multiple things, I think that's the clearest way to tell whether or not it's good exposition. It's got to make sense in the scene, but it's got to be doing more than just, oh, hello, audience, this is what is about to happen. No, it's letting the, just like Adam said, the journal entries, they're getting you into the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of these characters. You're getting inside their head, getting character development along with exposition, or you're getting world building along with exposition, even though those can sometimes be interchangeable. But if you're having more than one priority with every word you write, you're probably going in the right direction with what you're doing.
And the trickiest thing is at the start. If you're starting fresh, like we mentioned, sequel, starting new book. I'm working on prologue is just about done. First chapter's got its bits and pieces come together. I have to set up a new situation with the prologue, and that's exposition. You're setting up a new situation, a new goal. Then when you get to the first chapter, okay, we're back to our heroes. But guess what? Time skip. Time skip has happened. It's been several months since the end of the last moment you saw everybody. You have to do exposition. You have to explain what's going on. But as we said, if you get into it by talking about relationships and talking about the situation going on, this and that, and then add in an event that allows you to expand the world, suddenly that exposition becomes informative. I think that's the biggest problem with the current day lack of ability to do proper exposition. It's not even informative. It's just a information dump, or
Mm-hmm.
it's just vomited and thrown out there without any sort of logical thinking. And if you do an exposition right, suddenly, if the exposition's done right, you didn't even notice because it's good dialogue and it's good world building. And that's the key. Good dialogue plus world building. If it's visual media, if it's written media, or with Dre's case, the photographic media, comic media, Dre can express exposition through visuals.
Mm-hmm.
You could do 3 pages of no dialogue at all and get away with exposition by showing events, show don't tell. In my case, I have to lay out groundwork. I have to talk about world building history, and I use all the cheats I've talked about. But if it's done in a way that makes you remember this character, makes you draw back into the character, where you're connected to the character, people don't realize it. And that's the trick of good exposition, making it happen and you don't realize it just happened.
Yeah, that's another great example of it, because you never notice good exposition unless you're a person like us who's actively looking for it. But we can all come up with countless examples of bad exposition. I'm sure a lot of us can struggle to come up with examples of good exposition, at least to the same degree we can bad exposition, because you don't notice it. So I'd never really thought about it like that, but that's a great way of putting it as well. Lawrence, looks like you have something to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you're definitely right now because modern Hollywood has made it very easy to point out bad, bad exposition. but in contrast to that, good I would say good exposition at this point is independent media, like us. And unfortunately, and we have to be careful with this. Um, Dave set the bar low for what's good exposition at this point.
I think the answer to that is the quality of the creator will reset the bar. And if you put out the good product and you put out the good format, it's going to negate how low the bar is set. I mean, we already mentioned it. Avatar live action, that is bottom of the freaking floor bar level in terms of what they did in this thing. Yes, it's not hard to get over it. And that is, I think the biggest problem with that is also the normie is not aware of how low the bar is, or when they do become how low it is. If something's just a little bit better, they'll think it's great because they've
Mm-hmm.
been saturated with the crap. And I think our job as independent creators, as honestly the new wave, because Western entertainment, creative are bankrupt. I don't think they can save themselves in 10 years. I think everybody that's of quality is right here in the independent sphere because we've been gate kept. We've been pushed out. We haven't been allowed in because we don't have the right think. So what's happening is we're all working hard. We've been honing our craft. I've been honing my craft for 20 years, 20 plus years at this point, and I'm ready for prime time. I just need to get to a point where I can make it happen.
Only 20?
Only 20. Shut up. You know what you're going with that, you asshole. But it's our job to realize that if we have the skill and ability, don't just try to mail it in. Put all your skills, all your talents, all your tricks of the trade into it, so that when you put it out there, and if you catch any sort of traction, your bar is here. It's high up. And you become maybe not the standard, but a standard. And it then becomes apparent how low that bar is. Because let's be honest, who is actively seeking out current day Western entertainment, aside from a couple of outliers here and there, which also, let's be honest, things that people are excited for, they're not exactly new. People are ready to cream themselves over Dune 2. Dune has been out for 80 years. Basically 80 years. The first original 5, 6 books of Dune existed. Let's understand that. This is not a new property. It's something that is established and has a generational fan base. What else new coming out is something that people are actually seeking out? You'd have to think for a little bit here. And even then, some of those things you're probably going to say aren't perfect. They have their flaws. They have their modern day flaws. What people want is something that has that traditional flavor, but is absent the new modern current day shit. And that's our job, because I guarantee everybody on this panel, everybody in the chat, everybody who we hang out with, who is part of the Iron Age, part of the independent sphere, we do not buy into modern day, current day bullshit. You guys are talking about pronouns. When I walked in here, there's no, there are pronouns, 2 types, male, female. That's it. There is no other than that. You're not going to find somebody in one of our books questioning their pronouns. If you create a species that is genderless, if you're doing sci-fi or fantasy, that's different. You've created a species.
And there's plenty of great examples of that in Star Trek alone. My favorite character from Deep Space Nine is Jadzia Dax. It's kind of some complicated stuff when it comes to her pronouns.
Yeah, but in the end, she wants the D. She wants the Worf D.
But how many of us, just like going off what you said, have thought about the diversity quotas of our story? I never have, but strangely enough, every single time it ends up being relatively diverse, as if it's just the way it was logically meant to come out. I know Dre's story, it's not like his stories are 99% white, as Hollywood believes every story is. So there's natural diversity that we don't even need to think about. And yet we still do a good job integrating it, because it's not something that should be a priority or even something really thought about, in that sense, at least.
Jed, you've read my first book. You're one of my pre-readers. You've read it. When one character's sexuality emerged, did you see it coming at all? And did I make it a big deal? If you remember the particular character.
I don't, okay. I'm afraid. It's been about a year since I read it.
Sorry. So, well, I have a character whose sexuality, let's just say, is part of the community. But it didn't define him. And when I reveal it, what?
Sounds like you said he's the whore.
You didn't say whore.
You said his sexuality is of the community, like it belongs to the community, is what I thought. It's like everyone's had a piece of that sexuality.
Oh, come on.
He's a sexual communist.
You know what I'm saying, though? It didn't define him. And when it came about as the reveal, it was in a very key moment. And then it doesn't even come back into play when he's returns story. It's just, it's there. And it's just meant that is who he is. And it doesn't matter. And it's organic to the story. And he's a character that I created in my rewrite that didn't exist in the original version. I put him in there, and partway through I realized, I'll make him gay. Whatever, I'll make him gay, and I'll work it into the story where it has an actual meaning in the moment, where it can be revealed and not just saying, oh, hi, I'm in a bar and I'm hitting on this dude. Let's go slob some knob together. No, I didn't just do that. No, it's done in, I felt, a clever way.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have all kinds of proper organic representation without checking boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have a world, an actual world where maybe somebody of Dre's melanin complexion is
My
introduced in
melanin
this
deficiency.
introduced in this world at the point in the world where it's a lot of white people. And he's asking where the white lady's at. No, he's not. But you got to understand that eventually, since we're operating on a planet, a world where there are continents and countries, you're going to go visit his section of the world, and it's going to involve an important plot point. It's going to involve progression through the story because he has a character story that doesn't involve his skin. It involves his culture and his family.
Mm-hmm.
Has nothing to do with his skin. Yes, he's a 6'3" black dude walking around in a northern country where he's never seen snow before. So of course he's going to stand out. But that doesn't matter because it's not about that.
Mm-hmm.
And if it does come up, it's not because he's black. It's all because he's 6'4", 6'5", and built like a truck. Yet very, very, very deft with a staff weapon.
Whoa.
Not just an axe. He's got a staff. And he's got, I love it.
Jed, we all heard it. We all heard it.
Yeah.
You people have horny on your mind. God damn it. Listen, I go to Ball Busters, I get this shit. I come here, I get this shit. You bring it to my streams. God damn it, I ought to leave.
Well, I can't speak for Dre and Lawrence, but at least for myself, I've also integrated characters who are, racially diverse or sexuality diverse. And it made sense because as people who've studied Greek mythology know, there's some weird shit that happens, like Zeus turning into a horse. That was Poseidon, and having a baby. There's a lot of, animal stuff going on. There's a lot of changing genders. Dionysus spent the first years of his life pretending to be a girl to hide from Hera. Like, some weird stuff happened. And since my original book series is a modern day adaptation, not like Percy Jackson, that piece of shit that doesn't know mythology whatsoever, Rick Riordan, it made sense to integrate it in a mature manner that felt in line with the story. But that was my motivation, to stay accurate and honor the source material, in my case being mythology, rather than being like, oh, you know what, I have 20% white people in this, I might need to lower that down. There was no percentages in my heads or like numberings of how many diverse people it was. It's like, this character, because he's connected with this side of the mythology, it would make sense for him to be gay, just like you said, Adam. And I think to tie it back into the original discussion, Adam, you had to exposize the fact that he was gay.
I did it in a line, a single sentence. I happen to prefer the company of men. I didn't have him running through you screaming, I'm gay, I'm gay. He said it, he whispered it to the person he was encountering there, who he had just basically defeated in a game of wits. I happen to prefer the company of men. And it's not as though I've set up a world where homosexuality is a taboo. It just never comes up.
Sometimes it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
Right.
I can bring up the example of the book I'm writing right now, Palace. Unlike my previous book series, I want this to not necessarily be for all ages, like it still has an adult target audience, but be appropriate for all ages. So I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler for anyone, there's not even a single kiss in the book. There is nothing sexual whatsoever.
Sometimes you don't need it.
Sometimes you don't need it.
If that's not the story you're writing, listen, action movies, even though sometimes there are titties all over them from the 80s and the 90s, not necessarily romance in any of it. It's not a required thing if you're doing a certain type of story or tell a certain type of event. Now, what I do, romance is always going to factor in one way, shape, or form, because I do grand master epics that span books and are connected to large universes, and I'm trying to not only...
You need to show some way to make babies.
That too, yeah.
Not only that,
and yeah, you're right. There are generational, there are familial lines that are going to connect, and in some ways, also sometimes reincarnation comes into play. People die and are going to come back in certain fashion. I have to set this up and saying that maybe in this version, while we had feelings for each other, we didn't realize till the end, and even then, it would have been hard because of maybe two different species, literal species relationship might have been a little impossible, but then come back around another way. One person may have continued to live on, the other one then is reborn, their soul in a different body, and more, can happen better. And that's the way though. So romance is always going to find a way into what I do, because it's part of my storytelling DNA. I
You're
like
a
romance.
Romantic, Adam. Accept it.
Don't make it sound
You're
gay.
you're a romantic. There's nothing
I
wrong with
know,
that.
I know.
It's your thing. You're a romantic. That's
Yeah.
cool. And the way that you're able to try to still seamlessly flow that in without it being about somebody's sexuality or whatever the case may be is how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to flow naturally. They shouldn't have to cut away from the story to talk about how many chicks I'm banging. That's not how that works. Like, even if you think of like stories that are, if you want to consider somebody that's hypersexualized, like James Bond or something. James Bond is banging at least 3 chicks a film. All right. A random chick, the good chick, and then the bad chick. That's happening. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's how it works. But his story is not based off of the chicks that he's banging. He's doing a whole lot of other things, and they just happen to be along for the ride. That is how that is supposed to work. James Bond is not known as the heterosexual dude that's knocking him down. No, he is known as a super spy. That's how that works.
But then here's also the trick. If you're talking about James Bond, there is also a reason for his constant womanizing. He's trying to drown out the horrors of his life. And also, there's a great line from GoldenEye, finding comfort in all those willing arms for all the ones you couldn't save. All that. I mean, and then after, if considering the original Bonds from Connery all the way to Brosnan, it's all the same timeline. It's all the same Bond. After his wife was murdered by Blofeld, or actually the chick driving the car. Blofeld he didn't shoot the gun. Chick shot the gun. But you know what I'm talking about. After his wife died, that was a whole different level of mourning, where that's always going to eat at him, and he's going to continue to try and find solace in beautiful women. So there's actually a layer to it. It's not just that. There is actually a layer to it that Ian Fleming
character
put
development in there.
Ian Fleming made it that way for a reason.
So you don't think a feminist version of James Bond could work and be the same character?
No, because then she's
Okay.
a whore.
I mean, yeah.
He's not wrong.
No, he's not.
Not wrong.
Hey, listen, there's plenty of man whores around there, but if you're a female spy and you're using your sexuality, yes, it's one of your tools, but listen, we're going to call you a whore because it's more funny that way.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But that's why femme fatales are usually villains. That's
Good point.
why.
Yeah. They have no soul.
Well, I'll chime in on this.
You want to
I
talk about
keep my
horse, Harry?
characters free. I keep my characters free flowing. Excuse me. Whatever pops in my head, if it makes sense for that character to be gay, straight, sideways, diagonal, whatever for the story, then I'll use it. But I don't go out of my way to make them look a certain way. Just literally their face, their body type, it just pops in my head. Especially if it's based off of someone that I know. That's just the way it is. I have characters that I can't envision them being anything other than white. There's characters that I have that are black that I can't envision them being any other way than black. Some are blue, some are red. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Now, these characters that you said you're going to base off Dre and me, I hope that statement you just made doesn't apply to them. Like, Dre, just one day, you're like, you know what? His character's got to go into an all-male brothel and get, be the meat of the party.
Maybe. I don't know. When I look at Dre, I see right now I'm seeing somebody in the military. I don't know why. When I look
That's
at
fair.
you, Jed, honestly, when I look at you, I see Thor, like the real incarnation
Yes.
of Thor. So it would have to be
Pump Jed's
somebody
head up.
of that.
Don't do that.
I'm saying, but I can already tell that it's gonna be somebody that's humanoid like, but it's not, it's not from Earth. It's definitely gonna be somebody that's from somewhere else, very powerful. I can already tell.
Ginger
Adam,
for
you look like a
aliens.
villain.
We're
Adam, you
all
look like a
aliens.
villain, dude.
All right, what about Adam?
I am the bad guy.
Yeah, Adam looks like a James Bond villain.
He is.
Shave his head and he's Blofeld.
No. This ain't going anywhere. It's not disappearing and it ain't getting shaved off. All right. It's lasted these many decades. It's staying where it is.
Lawrence, cut off that mane. Get rid of it. Just get rid of it.
He would look absolutely sinister bald.
No, you gotta understand. My scalp is not a pretty scalp. It's got all kinds of bumps and waves in it. I would not look good bald. It wouldn't look
That makes it even better.
Yeah,
That makes it
no,
even
it
better.
doesn't.
because
No, it
villains
doesn't.
are disfigured a lot.
I don't want to be
Congratulations, you
disfigured.
just made Adam. Congratulations, you just made your character half reptilian in my
Nice.
with dots going down in a row, almost like Worf, but just in a straight, just straight lines, just right down the middle of his head.
Okay.
I want to see how you can integrate those three characters into a single story.
Oh, that's easy. I can do that. That's very easy.
Well,
Jed,
I
your
think.
Sorry,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Jed, your character flies down to Earth. He's in the middle of a battle. Dre is leading his troops. They see the impact. Dre goes over there. Some energy casts off, hits Dre. He gets affected. It changes him I'm getting tongue tied today.
Physiologically.
But it gives the runoff gives him power, and he helps you fight off the guy that you're fighting. And Adam is somewhere else in the base with all his henchmen watching it all happen. And he's like, well, I'll just wait for these idiots to knock themselves off, and I'll just make my way over there and see what I can get from it. So he's kind of a
Lawrence,
scavenger.
don't hesitate. Get to scribbling. Get to scribbling. It's already there. It's gold. Get to scribbling.
Well, something that I've been pulling up in the background just so the chat and Lawrence can understand what Dre's been referring to this whole time, and I know what we've been referring to is my psychotic outlines. I just need you all to understand what Dre's referring to. This is already published, so this isn't, protected material or anything like that. But yeah, this is how I outline. Just bullet points, and you would not be able to understand this. Sometimes I just used the word raven before, and it has nothing to do with ravens, but I know what I'm talking about, referring to another story. This is full encoded that no one else would understand, but it works for me. And I can't imagine doing anything different, like using an Excel spreadsheet. I can't
Number
imagine doing
85 just says greet.
He's cooking.
He's cooking.
that.
He's cooking.
He's cooking, is greeting. He agrees.
Yeah, now I'm hungry and he agrees.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is nonsense.
It really is.
Nonsense.
Listen, I don't really keep notes.
For God's sake, there's spaces.
The spaces. So that's another hidden
Word
meaning.
does that on its own. Wow, 100, they just pop over. I don't know why. It
I
just
don't
does
believe
that.
you. I think that's extra code.
I think this is all part of the plan. I ain't never seen that. I've been using
talking
words
about you
since the
and Adam, that
90s.
was
I ain't
those-
never seen it do that before.
I mean,
Those chapters was like you and Adam.
I can't. I mean, the way I do notes. I don't do any sort of note taking because the way my brain works, it just kind of once it's in there, it's in there. The only time I do it is for stuff like this. It's coming up. Is if I have created a spelling for something that I actually want to keep it because I will forget. I'll forget how to spell shit, but I will. I'll do. I will keep notes for representing shit I want to remember how to spell right, or if it's like this type here, like this is what I'll do. I mean,
Yeah.
if I want to remember, I like the way it looks. This is, or character names, that kind of stuff. So that's how I do it. But most of the time, my notes are stuck in my head, or they're attached to soundtracks that I created to help me formulate scenes how I want to see them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've done that as well. I have, I'm calling it a glossary right now, even though that doesn't make sense yet, but it'll eventually be included at the end of my book where it's just random notes of stuff I want to remember, definitions, events, places like that. And it'll eventually become a real glossary. Right now, it's just kind of a umbrella term. But yeah, you need to take good notes. That's always something that I've heard.
Now, what's important if you're doing a grand world is a timeline. I've done a timeline in the past. Now, it was in conjunction with other people. It was several of us working on it at once, and I'm going to have to do it myself eventually. But a master timeline is it's a great way to just have overview of events, especially if a lot of stuff which is historical and not necessarily put down on the written page or the picture page, and it's there. And that's also a great thing to not only maybe put in the back of a book, but if it goes on long enough, it could be an accessory piece of material all on its own with illustrations and that kind of stuff. So you can just have it expanding the material for the people who like your franchise. It's just, oh yes, here's the full timeline up to this point. Here's volume. Here's first edition timeline. Then here's second edition timeline expanded. New illustrations to depict some of these events that maybe you didn't see. Stuff like that. That's a fun way to make it interactive for people, and also it's a great organization tool because then there's the history. It's for lack of a better term, it becomes a Bible of sorts. This is the history of this universe you're building, and it's immutable. It doesn't change. It keeps you honest. If you publish something like that, you can't go back and retcon something then. I mean, now if it's a small thing internally that now listen, sometimes we all have to retcon little
things, but
you might have messed up.
Retcon.
I hate it too. And most of the time when I've had to do it, it wasn't my fault. It was somebody else's fault that I was working with, and I had to fix something they didn't tell me they did, or they didn't check with me since I was the one running the master storyline. They did something that's like, well, shit. Now I got to go back and retcon this. Got to make this make sense. But sometimes it's got to happen, especially if maybe you did something unintentionally and it works out really well, and you realize, okay, I want to keep this in here. Now I got to make a minute retcon to make it make sense. That's acceptable, but don't retcon your history. Don't retcon important moments. Don't retcon characters to suit maybe changing views of the world.
Yes, I agree with that 110%. Everything you just said, I would agree with. But there's one problem with both of you jokers. There's one problem with both of you. You ain't organized. This is what organization looks like, gentlemen. Gaze upon the magnificence. This is how it's done. All right. This is how you keep things in order.
It's organized up here. It's all up here. It's organized. I see it. Don't need your pedestrian Excel spreadsheets. I'm a mastermind of creativity.
If Adam has a superpower, it is his photographic memory, but more importantly, his selective photographic memory. Like, he chooses what to forget. He's like, oh yeah, I can totally show up then. Oh, what? We had plans? Oh no.
What?
Okay,
that happened once. I wasn't sure the start time. In my head, I thought it started time. And today I gave you warning I was going to be late.
I wasn't referring to today. No, you're good today.
The one time I didn't show up was a Doctor Who thing, and that was because I thought it was starting 2 hours later. For some reason, I thought it was starting 2 hours later. I have no real defense. Okay, and I made it for the end.
You did.
I got there.
All right, Dre, this is what I was referring to. This is my beautiful glossary. This is the most notes I have. So a few dates up here at the top, a couple definitions of things that terms, events, histories, acronyms, and yeah, this is how I...
Where are the subheadings? What is this madness?
It's alphabetical.
Hey, I respect alphabetization.
Subheadings, for Christ's sake.
I mean, there's not enough to warrant subheadings. If it went crazy,
numbers. You need subheadings.
Those are his subheadings.
Yeah, they're good enough.
Oh, merciful Christ.
Can I show you guys what I was using?
This is the type of stuff you do?
Well, for me, because I play D&D and some other stuff, but I actually found this character sheet I use is for something called Anime 5e, and I need something that can help me expand a little bit more on things. But this sheet, I can make a introduction on the character, a brief one, an illustration. If I knew how to draw, I can put their name, alias, everything physical descriptions. What I think this box is nowhere near long enough, which is why when you brought up the spreadsheet, the Excel sheet, I was like, yep, need to do that. Attributes, you can write down, their, what their powers are, proficiencies, defects, what affects them. You can put down
That's
whatever
a lot of
powers
room.
that they know. Oh yeah.
Character
Items.
sheets are a good idea.
You see, this is what I'm talking about. This is structure, gentlemen.
vehicle.
This is how
But
you
it's
get it
all up
done.
here.
Adam, you're a
Vehicle.
psychopath, and you should be
It's
ashamed
all
of
up here.
yourself.
I know what it looks.
Weapons.
I see it all. It's there.
Yeah, if you have weapons, you can put there companions, treasure, equipment, advantages,
And
disadvantages,
Jed,
Man,
you of all
okay,
people.
okay.
family.
You're showing all this stuff here. I'm just thinking back to old school second edition AD&D. It was one page with a front and a back, and that's all we got back in the day.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
but this one was a higher level. It was a more detailed character sheet that I paid for. It was like $5. But it has so much on it, like personality profile, and honestly, actually, this is the first time I've ever actually seen this. I've never actually scrolled down all the way. Character group, who are they with? Advancement. Then you got your journal for notes. I mean, this thing, it has everything in it. If you guys
This is perfect structure. This is the stuff I backstroke to. This is what I'm talking about. All right. That is what I'm talking about.
As long as the execution and the final product is good, any author can do any method they want. I've seen even crazier stuff than what Adam and I do.
Yeah, well, Adam doesn't even have anything on paper, which is just Rain Man stuff.
Rain Man.
I'm not going to do a Dennis Hoffman.
All right. This is actually something that Dre might do. I met an author who would make sound playlists for their characters.
Oh,
nice.
That's just so much detail.
Slay. Wow. Yes, that is correct.
From just music, it's like, this is his personality, and it's like a hard metal song. Or it's like, this is how he moans.
Oh, okay.
And it's just a sound bite.
Yeah, I do that. I have character songs on my story playlist of they vary from story to story depending on what's going on because it reflects the events. I mean, I do that.
Adam, do you have names by them? Do you have names by those?
No, but it's organized.
Of course not.
It's organized on the playlist. All the character themes.
If someone looked at this playlist, would they be able to tell which theme went with which character?
No, because here's what. All right, here I'm gonna bring it up.
Be a daggone shame. You're a liar and a thief.
No, listen. I'm not a liar and a thief. I'm a genius.
Oh,
a genius.
No, you look at this. I mean, here I've shown this in the past. So this is my playlist. I mean, this is one of the stories that's going to get rewritten for all the thing. Of course, it's just my playlist, but it's organized like everything from here. This is the intro thing because I come from an anime background, so in my head everything has an intro like an anime introduction where it's all up to high octane music and a bunch of characters, scenes, everything. I always have an anime intro in my head, so I always have an opening theme. But then everything from here, like here's Kryptonite from 3 Doors Down, way back in the day. This is our central character's main theme because at this point in this story, he gets broken a lot, and his family is his weakness for a long time until he comes to realize that. So let's do that. Again, Chad Kroger from what the fuck was that? What's that fucking group's name?
Even I'm with Dre on this, where just a little bit of notes, even if it's chaotic and you're the only one who can read it, just.
But
something.
I don't need it. I know who each character one is related to. And then you go down and you stop at about, and then there are relationship themes right here. These are relationship themes. And then suddenly here we are into the actual moments of the story where each track is connected to a moment that locks it in my brain. Granted, I've written this story completely, so it's completely locked in that way. But it goes on. And I mean, this particular playlist is 3 hours long. So if you, and also I do sometimes try to link up what I've written to the actual tune. So when you're reading it, moments in the music actually match up to the craziness going on. But I've done this, everything on here, all of these are essentially from like here down to here. This is all story playlists. I mean, you got another one here. another one here, another one here. I mean, this is my note taking essentially. This is it, and y'all don't need to see this shit. Not for you. Now, I will at some point. I'll be honest. At some point, I will, in special ways, make it available to people what these soundtracks were, so that if you're reading these stories in the future ones, if I can make the scenes line up again, which I should, although a lot of things are only changing just names. There are certain events that need to be retconned because I don't own that source material. But it lines up. So I would release that and say you can listen to this while reading the chapters, while reading it, and then you associate it. Of course, it can't be official because that's all copyrighted tracks.
So you're not going to be one of those authors who sells a CD with the book at the back?
No. I am not that kind of person. I don't have that kind of creativity. I can't make my own music. I can't. I'm not that good.
That's my shtick.
Yeah, I can't do that. I will borrow and say this is what inspired me. You may listen to it if to get the full impact. But now, if somebody one day wants to create soundtracks for this stuff, go ahead.
Yeah,
I will pay you to do it if you are talented enough.
Well, I don't do it like this, but I also have a playlist that I listen to while I write, and certain songs become implicitly tied to certain scenes that I write. Like later on, when I hear a certain theme, I think of a certain scene that was just really matching up with what I was writing. And for some reason, the last week or so, it's the Assassin's Creed theme song from Assassin's Creed 2, Ezio's Family one. That is just, I put that shit on repeat. It's weird. And I've been made fun of for it when someone walks.
Oh no, I do that. I do that. I will put the same song. If I have, I have a particular, very small, 3-song playlist of things I'll put on. They have, for me, they have no relation to anything I'm doing, but it's kind of a neutral tune that I can it sort of puts my mind in a certain level of focus where it's there, and it's not, and it's simply cutting me off from the rest of the world. Because that's what it needs to do. It needs to cut me off from the rest of the world, especially in a situation where I sometimes am now, where outside noises are interfering. And I'll have to put on the headset to tune it out and put on the music. Also, it just kind of gets me. Now, sometimes I will write in complete silence too. I will do that. Or I'll write to the actual track that's going with that scene, because I'm trying to keep myself in the moment. But it varies. But I have that tune that I will listen to straight for about 3 hours. Same thing, over and over again. I know that's sociopathic, but I do it because it's just like this thing that it's this perpetual beat that keeps me in the rhythm of what I'm doing.
Well, I think. Oh, go ahead, Jen. I'm sorry.
Just real fast. For any hesitant writers in the chat, I hope the thing that you take away from this is when it comes to writers' processes, there's no way to do it right.
It's your way.
Might be contradiction to what Dre's about to say, because we're psychopaths. But I think that's a big thing that a lot of classes mistake. Like I've had teachers that I've seen who instruct people how to write professionally, and they all give this really weird specific advice. Like I saw one on this topic say, never listen with music. It can affect your work in a negative way.
That's BS.
Bullshit.
And it's like, well, that might affect you, but maybe if someone is curating the music like Adam and I do, it can elevate it. And Dre, you actually have to make your music with your work because that's a big part of the story. So like these absolutes are asinine to me. When it comes to writing, there are not really many things that I would say are absolute rules. There are
I will agree.
Methods.
And I'm in complete agreement with you. Be
agree.
good. That's number one. Absolutely.
Yes, that is a rule.
Yeah, that's absolute. And I agree with you. I think every writing process is just something that we're mentally unwell. Like I can't even write at home anymore. I cannot write at home. I have to have headphones in at a coffee shop, or I
used to do that.
Write.
I used to take the laptop for a period of time and go do that. Now I don't want to leave my setup. I like my setup. I'm very
see that's the thing. I was the opposite. I used to be. I want to be in my seclusion and my vision, and I'm gonna listen to PD Pablo for 3 hours and do stuff. Now I have to go somewhere. I have to sit where there's a whole bunch of people, and I have my earbuds in my ear, and I'm just all clicks. And I have my music in one ear and all writing in the other, and I have like my other screen.
I was there once
with like reference. And at this point in my writing career, I cannot function without doing that now.
Mhm.
I can't do it. I'm sitting there blasting Metallica and freaking Wu-Tang Clan in the middle of the daggone Starbucks. I got crazy white liberal moms looking at me like a crazy person, and I'm like, yeah, you don't want this heat. And I, you know what I mean? And I'm just, and it just, that's the only way I can get it done. And I like the writing process, the creative process. There, like you said, Jed, there is no absolutes. There is no this is how it has to be done. If somebody can't do it without music, first of all, I think you're mentally unwell. Outside of that, good for you. I'm glad you can accomplish that. But without music, without these type of distractions, I can't function that way. But then there are those like Adam, and in his point at the point of his writing career is looking for the seclusion. Like there's all types of different ways to get it done. But what Adam said is perfect. You gotta be good. Screw everything else. If you ain't there, that's different. You got to bring that
What Jed
nuclear heat.
said, you bring it up. Those teachers, it never is it more apparent if you can't do it, you teach. Those who can't teach. There's
Those who
nothing
can't
wrong
do
with
teach.
teaching. There's nothing wrong with teaching, but
Mhm.
don't put in your failure abilities, especially in that situation where you're trying to teach people how to write correctly. And there's nothing wrong with learning proper mechanics and all that shit.
Mhm.
I just absorbed that over a decade's worth of retarded uh, um, education that I
Mhm.
waste a lot of money on. I just happened to I learned the skills doing that. But there's nothing wrong with that. But then try and force people to adhere to skill sets that obviously didn't work for you because you're in a
Mhm.
classroom. You're not published, and you couldn't even put something together that you could garner a foundation of support from the world to self-publish, which
Mhm.
is what I am trying to do, what many are trying to do. I mean, that's the whole
Mhm.
purpose of the Iron Age. It's us. We're not gatekept, we're not told to do anything. That's why I recently, I mean, God bless my mom. God bless my mom. She's always trying to look for things to say, oh, have you tried this aspect? And she says, well, this particular group here, that looks like they have open solicitation. And I said, Mom, listen, anybody that you get into bed with, will you give them any sort of connection to your what you're doing, they will have some level of control over you.
Mhm.
And we are at a point in this modern entertainment world where they want to force you, if they any sort of control can force you to adhere to what they want. And that means, unfortunately, current day shit, pronouns, flags, all the shit we rail against in all day long, all week long. When you answer to one person, well, two people. You answer to yourself if you are capable of having that kind of proper internal dialogue with yourself, where you're honest with yourself, and you answer the people in the chat, your fans, your subscribers, the people who are your customer. That is who you answer to. Now, sometimes they're going to be they listen. Customers always right unless they're trying to tell you how to write. Then they're going to be wrong. Because your vision, your story is going to be your story, and they're listen. They're going to love what we do, but they're always going to be angry at certain points. Is why did you do this to this character? Because I had to.
Mhm.
They had to die. I'm sorry, they had to die.
Adam, I'm glad you actually said that. I just had a flashback. So, um, one of my good loyal readers finished the entire arc recently. It's quite a long book. They were so mad at and how I ended the book because they wanted it to go a different direction, but
Mhm.
they had to respect the fact of how good it ended up still being. And they wanted like, hey, I wanted this to happen. Like, I'm sorry, baby. That's not how it was gonna go down. Like, but I wanted to see. I know what you want to see. But that's the type of stuff I can respect because that's passion
Mhm.
and that's
Yeah.
love.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
And that's
it's
something that
such
they
a
want to see.
compliment to get feedback like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and a lot of people have said now not all of us have the same writing process. We've talked about Germ all the time, where he's the exploratory writer. I cannot comprehend that
There's no way I could do that. Yeah.
because I have everything planned out, and that's what I want to say is most of the time, most people I know who I've encountered who are creatives and writers, we I have my beginning and my end, and I have my important points. Some things may change along the way, but the course is set. There is a destination, and some of these things are, to quote Doctor Who, these are fixed points in time. They don't change. These events, I'm going to have them play out the way I want to play out. And my hope is, even if it doesn't go the way you like Dre just explained, you still had a good time. You're still willing to read, enjoy it, knowing where it goes. And in the and at the conclusion of it all, be satisfied with the ending. You just got to stick that landing. And also, that's key. Know when to end it. I mean, now that might be saying somebody, Adam, you're planning 30 odd books. Yeah, well, there is an end of sorts. There is an end of a sorts. I have it up here. It's all laid out, but it's a very long journey. And the key for me is, am I going to be able to keep people interested for this long journey? I think I will.
Adam, don't you dare One Piece us. Don't you dare do it.
Hey, listen. Oda Sensei is the man. He is the master. I want it to go on forever. I don't want it to end.
Adam, I agree with what you said, and honestly, it makes me feel better about the way that even with the novels that I started writing, it made me feel better with the way that I write them. And I actually got into an argument with a creative writing teacher in my undergrad, because he looked at the way I was writing and he was like, "Oh, you're writing a script." I said, "No, I'm not writing a script." And he was like, "Well, a script is written like this, so you're writing a script." And I said, "No, because you look at these scripts and the names and what they're saying, the names of the characters and what they're saying are in the middle, going down in a straight line down a paper, down a paper, and that's not what I'm doing." And he tried to force his view onto me, and so the way that I write, I created my own style, and I refuse to conform to what is approved prose. And especially with what you said about control, you have to, it's all you almost have to, you have to be your own publisher. You really do. You're gonna have to sit down and do the work, because like you said, today they're forcing pronouns on us, tomorrow it'll be pseudonyms.
Yep.
Well, I think the most important rule when it comes to writing, and this really applies to all industries and jobs and whatnot, and especially to our discussion of exposition, is you need to know the rules to know when to break the rules. That is common sense. So that is the most important tool when it comes to writing and any other job, is just have some common sense, have a way to go through the rules and think, all right, this is what most people do, and I should adhere to this probably most of the time, but there are going to be exceptions, and you need to be able to tell when those exceptions are. Because, like Dre said, there are exceptions where good grammar isn't what you should do when it comes to something like eubonics or dialogue. Dialogue is very much a guaranteed place where nobody really speaks in perfect grammar. I've rarely, if ever, spoken with someone who just perfectly exemplifies all rules of grammar all the time. There's not a person alive that I know who could do it 100%. Some snobby people try to do it, of course, but in dialogue, you break those rules all the time. And that same example can apply to so many different situations. And so, yeah, when it comes to exposition, there are rules with exposition. There are ways to do it right. But at the end of the day, you need to know when to counteract those rules, because a rule of writing would not be to do the Star Wars intro. The Star Wars intro does not seem like, on paper, if you just describe the Star Wars opening crawl to me, I would not assume that was a good way to do exposition. But because of the stylization with it, the way it's executed, the grandiose music, it all fits together so well that it became an exception to the rule. And so we just need to constantly learn the rules and critically think to know when to break the rules. And that's really what it comes down to as a writer. You got to be educated, but critical thinking in tandem with education is the only way to be truly talented in any field. But I think that's going to be a good point to bring it to a close, since we're nearing the 2-hour mark, at least with this discussion. So let's go around the horn and just do final thoughts right now. Final thoughts on good versus bad exposition, anything that we've talked about, anything like that. And then we'll go around again and pimp our wares and whatnot. So Lawrence, do you have any final thoughts on anything that we really discussed about the writing process tonight?
Good exposition. Write what matters to you. Be fair. And stay away from bad exposition, which is everything we're seeing in Hollywood today.
Fair enough. Very concise. Brevity is the soul of wit, as Shakespeare said. What about you, Dre? Any final thoughts?
I only have one thought. For the love of God, stay away from as you may know. That's all that matters to me. Stay away from those words. Write exposition that leads to action. Anything outside of that is just saying words.
Words are wind. I'm being a dickbag. Adam, any final thoughts?
Just gonna repeat what I said earlier. If you're gonna do exposition, try to find clever ways to do it. Try to find ways to make it interesting. Weave it into the context of your story where you're actually drawing in your reader to what you're doing. Make them feel like they're learning something. Trick them into not realizing it's exposition. That's what I do. It's don't realize you're getting an information dump because it is an information dump, but you're so drawn in at that point, you don't realize it, and then suddenly, wow, okay, I had a good time. That's my advice on that. Make it so that don't make it feel like exposition. Make it feel like something else entirely, and that's how you get away with it.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to go around the horn right now and pimp our wares, whether that be YouTube or our current writing projects that we're dealing with. And with that, as I mentioned a couple times during the stream, is I am officially writing a new novel. I'm actually getting very close to the end of my first draft, and that'll be called Pallas. I have it up here because everyone's been confused about the spelling. That is Pallas Athena from Greek mythology. And I'm currently shopping around with agents and publishers. I'm considering doing the crowdfunding method. It just depends on how much interest I can garner with that, but I'm already in discussions with agents. So I hope to work within the industry to make it better for other people as well, and still try to keep my identity as an independent writer as well. So there's a lot to go over with that, but I'm really excited about this project. First sci-fi project I plan on publishing, so this will be quite a different deal for me. Hopefully have it out by the end of the year is the current goal with the projections that I have. And just to give people some teases, a little teasing going on, I have some official artwork that I'll be sharing with this announcement. We have the map of the world that I'm going to be spending the majority of the time in. This is Pallas, the planet Pallas, which is about 100 years of travel away from Earth. So the majority of the story will be taking place on this map, and a lot of it will also be split between the journey it takes to get to this planet. It's kind of a split story, but I'm really proud of this map. I didn't make it myself. I had it made, had it commissioned, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. I hope you guys are enjoying it. And to answer Legatus's question in the chat, I'm aiming for about 250 to 300 pages. Definitely significantly shorter than my last projects, which were around 600 pages each. But this one, I wanted to go in the style of 70s sci-fi, and just the pocketbook was the idea that I had in my head with those same dimensions. Just the everyday person can get a small paperback, slip it into their back pocket, and read it as they're going about their daily life. And that's what I've seen a lot of sci-fi from back in the 60s and 70s was like. And even before that with the Louis L'Amour books that I grew up loving. So that's kind of the format, the style I'm going for is the pocketbook novel. And I have one last piece of concept art. This one isn't going to be in the final book, but this one is concept art for the vessel of my story. We've got the Atridony, the SCC Atridony. This will be my primary vehicle throughout the series, and I'm really excited about this because I prefer sci-fi that is very grounded. I prefer real science, real rules, real laws of the universe. And so I've done a lot of studying to figure out, all right, how would this work? Setting current models of faster than light travel. Like the primary model right now these days is the Acubur White model, which could fold space. So that's a model that I use as the foundation for the drive in this story. So from the design of the rings to like everything in the ship is designed off the real world science that I was able to research. And I have so much fun doing that. So this is the story I'm working with. I hope you all are looking forward to. I hope you all will enjoy it when it eventually does come out. Again, it is still quite a ways off, but considering I started this project in December, I feel like I've made some pretty decent progress. So All right, so that is what I am currently working on. Palace, a sci-fi story. Adam, are you? I got anything going on the horizon that people can look forward to?
Well, as far as writing goes, let me just. Oh wow, that is bigger than I wanted it to be. Anyway, let me get that up there. As far as writing goes, there is my book. It has been completed for a number of years. You can just see it right here. Guardian of Innocence, book 1 of the Chronicles of Rosetta by me. And it's basically, it will happen with everybody's support. I am going the crowdfunding route because I just want to do it myself. I don't want to be tied down to publisher because my last round, I got gate kept out of it. You can share the screen.
Oh.
Yeah, you can. I got gate kept. They didn't like what I was pushing. It wasn't fitting in according to the agents, and therefore I couldn't even get to the publishers. The agents didn't want to hear what I have to say. So I'm going the crowdfunding route, but that requires everybody's help, subscribers, chats. Check out my channel, The Renaissance Nerd. I cover pop culture reviews, all kinds of fun stuff like that. And when we get to a certain point where I can guarantee, as these guys all understand, we can guarantee a certain amount of people are going to buy the book to fund it, to make it, then we'll do the crowdfund. We'll make it happen. But it needs your support, and I appreciate all the support I've had up until then. I'm hoping maybe it'll happen this year if the channel can, break out. I'm hoping this will be a breakout year for my channel. Other than that, as I said, regular stuff on my channel. You can find reviews, takes, regular stuff. Right now, you can find my episode 4 of Halo Season 2 review. Show is trash, complete trash. I have stepped into the Avatar Last Airbender live action review scene. I may truncate my reviews. I've been sitting around thinking a lot today. I had to sit around a car for an hour with nothing but myself to occupy my time. And I don't know if I want to do 7 more single episode reviews. I might just do one single drop because it's not good. And I'm watching the reactions of people, and the stands are. I mean, frankly, we're going to have a discussion tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern on Roundtable. Dre's effing off. He's not going to be either. I don't care what you have to say on this. But we're going to talk adaptations tomorrow. It was a weird week, so we're going to go discussion heavy. We're going to talk adaptations. Good, bad adaptation. What does it mean to do an adaptation? And the defense of it's just an adaptation. I'm sorry, as far as I'm concerned, that doesn't hold water. So we're going to talk about that. Then every 4:15 p.m. Eastern after Roundtable, Star Trek Engage every Sunday. We're finishing up season 1 of TOS. You can find Larry there sometimes as well. We're doing that. Our guest is Kenzo, the war criminal, who continues to post memes to ruin my Star Trek fantasies. He's a menace. It's going to be terrible. And after that, I have just been recruited for my 3rd week in a row to get on Get Ranked. We're doing 1980s girls cartoons, and you guys are going to roast the shit out of me because Devil needed one more person, and unfortunately, as a child of the 80s, I watched everything. So I have some knowledge of 80s girls cartoons because if it was on, I watched it. So I'm gonna get shit for that one. I know I am. Yeah,
Sure.
shut up. Shut
It's
up.
not
See,
like you
it's already
transitioned
starting.
after you were a little girl.
Yeah, shut up. See, it's already starting. Other than that, throughout the week, Mondays, Mellow Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern, where we sit, chill out, have a good time, try to nerd out. There'll be a new segment every week, Nerd Debate, where where either myself or the chat is open to do. We're just gonna drop one random nerd type discussion, and we will have at it because we had a lot of fun doing that last week. Rest of the week, Natural 20 every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Throughout the week, check out, as I said, regular reviews and games. And if you want to watch me game, go to my gaming channel, Renaissance Nerd Arcade. Right now, I am uploading my replay of Final Fantasy VII Remake in preparation for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth next Thursday. And as always, Jed, it's a pleasure to be with you. But tonight, we're not done, though. I just realized that I skipped over what we're doing today.
Oh, I was going to build up to that at the end.
We are, you can find Jed and myself on both our channels, Saturday Night Drive-In. Because it's being talked about, I said, screw it. We're talking Starship Troopers tonight. And the Eternal
in
Question.
about 2 hours on this channel and the Renaissance Nerds channel. So tune back in.
we're going to discuss the most important thing: Dizzy or Carmen. That's the most important debate to have.
Oh,
Dizzy or Carmen.
obviously. And
Yeah.
second to that, but a very, very distant second, is whether or not it succeeded at being parody, because that's been the big discussion.
Yeah,
I've
well,
seen.
we're going to talk about that. So we're going to do Starship Troopers tonight, and that's it. That's it. And as always, Jed, I love doing Writer's Corner, and hopefully next time I will have more work done on book 2 in the Chronicles of Rosetra, The Distance Between Hope.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here again, Adam and Lawrence. It was great to have you here on Writer's Corner as our guest, it seemed like. So I appreciate you coming on. And is there anything that you would like to pimp?
Well, besides myself, you guys can catch the link to my Nice Lord channel in the description. In fact, after we get off here, I'm going to call my family, spend some time with them, and then I'm going to write excuse me. I'm going to start working on my next short story, which I'm calling Locomotive, and that should be out in a few days. You guys can catch me every Friday on Abyssal Musings with my co-host Samuel the Infamous and another co-host of mine when she's able to attend because she works Friday nights. Know Me Without You. You can also catch me occasionally on Vets Talking on Thursdays and Saturday nights, as well as the Exile Lioness 2 channel in the chat as a moderator, and also occasionally on Star Trek Engaged when I and Kenzo occasionally drop in and terrorize Adam and everyone else.
War criminals.
And Kenzo really is brutal with those memes. Man, is he?
Horrible. He puts Dermy's face on Dr. Crusher. It's all kinds of wrong.
Oh.
Yeah, you haven't seen these memes. They're horrible.
No.
Kenzo is he's a menace.
Yeah,
as long as he doesn't do it on the Yeoman, I'll survive.
Well, he created Yeoman Swifty.
Oh. Yeah, he did.
Yeoman
he
Swifty.
also did Taylor as the Borg Queen. Was that Kenzo that did the Borg Queen?
I don't know if that was Kenzo. I didn't see that one. I don't know if he did that one.
Star Trek deserves better than this, but to be fair, it's still not as bad as what Paramount's doing to it right now.
No,
so.
Yeah.
But that is the show for today. Thank you all so much for coming and joining in this discussion. Thank you to the chat. Legatus, Biggles, Metz.
Wait a minute. Yeah, I didn't get a pimp myself. Hold on.
I'm just an asshole, apparently. I'm a racist.
I'm over there, you racist ginger Jesus.
I just wanted to see if you'd notice. I just wanted
to see. I was sitting there, wait a second, I didn't say anything. Jed, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be back on the Writer's Corner. For those that want to follow me on Twitter, it's at TheBrute00, and on YouTube, the Brutal Plan Comics YouTube channel. And as we have all been full on prostituting ourselves, why not do the same for himself? I am still leaving up on Indiegogo currently. The graphic novel for Trouble, The Rhythm Within, is still available. Definitely check it out for those that want to check out this book. 242 glorious pages of insanity, and it's a whole lot of fun. Definitely an action adventure musical that you definitely want to check out. So once again, I'm happy to be here. Follow me on Twitter and all that other great stuff. You all been fantastic, and it's been a lot of fun for me.
Right. Am I allowed to end my show now, Dre?
Yes, you are.
God, thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, once again, thank you to all my panelists and the chat. We couldn't do this without you. And I hope that this inspires not only my fellow panelists, but the chat as well to get into writing, to contribute to the Iron Age, because that's the only way we're going to get good stories anymore with the mainstream media, whether that be movies, television shows, or comics, or even books, is not going to give it to us. So we have to make it ourselves. So if our little show can influence just a couple writers, I deem it a success. But that's all we have for today, and we'll see you guys on the next stream. Anand. Take care, everyone.
Hey, yo, are you feeling what I'm doing up in here? Oh, I know you are. Do you miss all the good, compelling stories that we used to get back in Hollywood that they ain't putting down no more? Oh, I know you missing it. So check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues, baby. Book 1, Down in Flames. Book 2, Apocalypse Then. These are currently on sale. What are you waiting for? Get your hands on them. And we got Book 3, Kill the Dark, is coming down the pipeline. Just wait for all the good stuff this dropping. You ain't gonna be disappointed, fam.